Welcome to the cave. Thank you for joining me today.
Elias, thank you, sir, for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Exciting times, my friend. You just had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 you were just on. It's interesting. I was doing some research on you, and you're all over the place with everything. You're a busy person.
It feels all over the place is one way to put it. Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna jump more into the movie in a little bit, but like I mentioned, like acting, writing, directing. You've also taught acting, also, right?
I do. I do to this day.
Yeah.
I teach a class weekly.
And voiceover work also. What's left, man? What's on that bucket list of yours that you want to hit?
All I ever want is another job, like most actors. Any day working is a good day in my book, and I'm not terribly choosy. I'm always looking forward to the next thing down the pike.
Amazing. So entertainment industry, everybody like acting and everything, you go into a journey to get it to where you are right now. Grew up in Boston, you mentioned off the air and everything. What made you get into the industry? What made you fall in love with it?
Well, the quick answer is I saw Sweeney Todd at the Colonial Theater in Boston when I was about 9 years old, and fell in love with the theater, fell in love with telling stories, fell in love with playing characters, and I was driven from a very early age. I started, there's a wonderful organization called the Boston Children's Theater, where I took classes, and then I spent summers in Dover, Massachusetts at Charles River Creative Arts Program, and I learned filmmaking and animation, and pretty much pursued it all the way through, and tried to figure out a normal life. I went to the University of Chicago, and as opposed to what I really wanted to do, which was go to theater school. And after a couple of years there, I dropped out and went to NYU and got my theater degree anyway. And then in the 90s, I did a lot of unseen theater in New York, and around the turn of the century came out to LA to see if they could use another actor.
So you mentioned theater when you mentioned you went from theater into pretty much TV and film. What made you take that next jump?
It's funny. I was having this conversation. There's an actress, a wonderful actress named Miriam Shore, who is in Guardians, which I didn't know until the premiere, but we ran into each other. She and I had done a independent feature in 1998 or 1999 called Flushed in New York, and I don't think I'd seen her since. She's still in New York. She's making a go of it there, a hell of because she's got a beautiful, wonderful career. Justifiably so. She's a magnificent actor. But we were talking about, I moved out here in the early aughts, and I did it because it seemed at that time that the goal of the New York actor is to get to Broadway. And I had more than a few friends who had successful off-Broadway shows that would then get moved to Broadway, and they wouldn't go with the show. They'd bring in an actor from film or television to replace them. Yeah. And so, among a lot of other variables, that seemed to me, well, if the goal is to get on Broadway, the path does not seem, at that time, did not seem to be to go through New York. So I figured the unpaid downtown theater I've done a lot of, and it'd be nice to see if I could make some money, maybe get health insurance and some sort of security, and LA seemed the place to do that.
I've had other guests on where they've done the theater and they jump right to TV and a film. What was the biggest challenge for you doing that?
Well, it's a lot different. Yeah. It's a big difference. The challenges are myriad. From learning how to hit your mark to learning. I think the thing that surprised me really the most was in the early days. I think the first real professional gig I was on was a wonderful show called 6 Feet Under, and I was amazed at how small everything was, how quiet the actors were, and so it was a bit of an adjustment, really learning how to act for the camera versus acting on stage. And it's interesting, you brought up voiceover, which I haven't really done, but I did a lot of performance capture, which is how we did the 2 Red Dead games that I worked on, and that is an interesting tech, because your face is sort of on camera and the size is sort of on camera, but your body can be very theatrical. So it sort of is a fusion of the skills that I developed working on stage and the skills that I learned through my experience working on camera.
What do you enjoy more between now theater, TV, video game world?
The next gig, really, whatever's next. What I will say, theater, there is a heartbreak built into theater in that it disappears, it goes away. There's an ephemeral nature to it that is romantic on the one hand, but on the other hand, your work sort of disappears. And for better or worse, when you work on camera, it's not going anywhere. And the permanence of that is excites me.
Have you do you still do the theater?
Not so much. Not so much. I'm not opposed to it. It's just it's a lot of time. It's a lot of work that you can't do any other work during, and it's not a lot of money. I do continue to direct in the theater. I have an actor. He's a poet and well, he's a multi-hyphenate. And he does some solo shows, which is something I had some experience in. But so I direct and help him develop his one-man shows, and that keeps me with sort of a toe still in the theater. But principally, my focus is on camera.
So it's funny because like we've seen you in the Marvel universe also. You've been Guardians of the Galaxy. Had a role in Ant-Man. Is there like another dream role you want to hit one of these days?
I have been so lucky so far that with the parts that I've been fortunate enough to play, and the idea that I was a kid. I collected Marvel comics as a kid, and so this idea that I am in some small part of the MCU is beyond my wildest dreams. So as for what's next, I'm hopeful. I go into everything just eager for the challenge and the surprise, and so I don't know that there's a dream role. I mean, if there was a dream role, I think I fulfilled it with this character. I got to play Dutch Vanderlyn, who is everything after Dutch, I think, is gravy.
What's been like the fan reaction with the video game world with you? Because you've done Comic Cons, I saw too.
Yeah, it's unexpected and enormously gratifying. There's a thing about the way, and again, it's a common misconception that the work that we did on Red Dead Redemption was voiceover. It wasn't. It was performance capture. And one of the things that means is that there's no foreign language version of it. There's no dub of that. The game is too large for it to be dubbed. Yeah. So our characterization exists worldwide. And when you're working for a company like Rockstar Games, and frankly, if you're working for a company like Marvel or Disney, there is this sort of global aspect to it that you don't think of on the day, but in the wake of it, going to these conventions, getting to meet all of these people from all over the world, it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming, and it's very gratifying. And you also these to tell these stories requires thousands of people. Oh, yeah. So you end up feeling like something of an ambassador, because it's not everybody that gets called to go do these conventions. So the fact that you're one of the lucky schmucks that gets to do it, I just try very hard to be a good representative of all the people that aren't there, and it just makes me feel very lucky.
Is there any future plans to see you to be involved again with the games?
Games, I don't know. That you'd have to ask Rockstar. I, like any other gigging actor, I audition all the time. But no, there's nothing in the pipeline. There is sort of game related coming down the pike. Will be Lionsgate's Borderlands, where I play a character that was created by a wonderful actor named Bruce DuBose in the games, called Marcus Kincaid. And I'm going to be playing. I'm playing him. I don't know when that film's coming out, but we have a banger of a cast, and it should be a lot of fun.
Is this film coming to theaters or is it streaming?
For theaters. At least that's the intention. I think we've got, it's Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Hart and Janina Gavankar, Edgar Ramirez, Jack Black. It's a murderers. I think it's gonna. My instinct is it's gonna make it to the theaters, but
it has to be.
You never know, though, man.
With those names, though, it has to be.
It's nothing till it's something, Elias. That's my experience.
Right. So yeah, let's jump into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. First of all, like, how was it being part of this world, and how were you approached to be part of it?
Well, I've known James for a very long time. We go back 25 years, and my first association with Guardians, in fact, was on pre-production on the first film. He was doing screen tests, and James asked me if I'd come in and play what ended up being Drax in those screen tests opposite Peter Quill. So I've been sort of Guardians adjacent for quite some time, but it was you may not believe it, but it was at the premiere of Ant-Man and the Wasp at Mann's Chinese Theater. I ran into Steve Blackheart and James coming out of the restroom at the theater, and I escorted them back to their seats, and I asked James how the Guardians 3 script was coming, and he said then that there might be something in it for me, which you're at a premiere. It was a pretty exciting night, and so I have that. I'm watching the premiere of Ant-Man, and I go to the after party, and I see James at the after party, and James says, "Oh, well, you can't be in Guardians now. I didn't know you were in Ant-Man." And I was like, "You can't do something?" And I went and protested to Peyton, the director of Ant-Man, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." And then it was a week later, and I ran into James again at a screening for a film that he and other friends were working on that ended up being called Brightburn. And James told me there, you're going to be in it. And then, of course, lots of things happened. That was 2018, I think. And then, James went on this very, very circuitous journey, made Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, and then returned to Guardians. And I was very surprised. I think it was, he reached out to me and said there was a role. And I said, "Is it the same role that you were talking about way back at the premiere?" And he said, "Yeah." So it was a very long route to get there. But I wouldn't, that's how these things are. It's always a long walk to get to any opportunity in this business.
So, like, I know nothing about the comics for this. Is this character in the comics too?
I don't. I have no idea.
Okay.
We're shooting on the day, and James shouted out the character's name while we were, and so James will get a take, and then he's got a God mic, so he's back in Video Village, but he can talk to you and you can hear him. And once you've got it, he's throwing out ideas. You may have come to realize this about James Gunn, but he's a word that's used all the time is genius. James is a genius. And so he just, whatever's coming to mind, and he threw out this character name, Bletlesnort, and it ended up sticking and made it into the film. And now I showed up to teach my class on Monday, and some of the actors in the room were delighted to call me Bletlesnort, which they're gonna be in trouble if they keep that up.
That's right. Hey, and the great thing about it is at the next Comic-Con you'll be signing pictures of that character.
I will be delighted. I will be delighted to be an ambassador of the Guardians franchise in any way, shape, or form. I think with this trilogy plus, because there's the Christmas special, the holiday special, and then the Avengers films, but this whole enterprise of James is I think an extraordinary group of films, and I'm just so pleased to be a small part of it.
I went on your Instagram handle. I wanted to see if there was any pictures of your uniform, like the makeup that did everything on there. I want to know, how long did it take for them to put that on you?
Well, we did it over 3 days. It didn't take 3 days to do it, but there was
Right,
3 days of shooting. And I think the first and Legacy Effects, which was founded by Stan Winston. Well, they are, speaking of geniuses. I mean, what they did, people imagine these films and they imagine that it's all green screen and they imagine it's all CG. And at least on James's set, nothing could be further from the truth. The stage that we were on for the Orgo headquarters, all of those makeups were unbelievable, and all of them you could put into extreme close-up and they would all play. Those poor guys as the Orgo sentries in those giant massive suits. But so my makeup, to answer your question, was, I think the first day it took a little less than 3 hours to get into, because I think there's a bald cap, there's the skull cap, there's a piece here, piece here, piece here, piece here. There's 3 pieces on either ear. There's all sorts of stuff, and it took about an hour to get out of. And I think by the third day, it was down probably 2 hours and 25 minutes to get it all sorted. And then, of course, there's those lenses that they put into your eyes. But it is. It was really, really a wonderful makeup, and it allowed so much expressivity that I think was really essential to make that comedy play. But it was, you know, you asked me if there's a dream role that I've ever had. There is. I've always dreamt of playing a Klingon in any iteration of Star Trek. And I don't know that it'll ever happen, but if Bletlesnort is the closest I come to playing a Klingon, I feel I'm okay with that. There's a little Klingon going on.
I can see that in the picture.
Forehead. So that was that. I was tickled by that.
How long were you in that for the day? For
all day. And it's surprisingly comfortable. The only thing that is all a challenge are the lenses. And there's wonderful, I wish I remember her name, but there was a woman on set who would come and she'd squirt your eyes all the time. Really makes you feel, it's sort of an infantilizing kind of thing to have somebody, can I squirt water in your eyes? Like, yeah, okay. But it was a remarkable makeup. And it becomes second, you forget that you have it on, and you catch yourself in the mirror and are taken aback.
You mentioned you know James now for how many years? You said 20, 30 years?
Yeah, I was in a theater company that he was associated with called Zoo District right when I got out here, and we met there right around the time that he had sold the screenplay to Scooby-Doo, which I thought was that was a goofy enterprise. Who knew that it was going to be this big that it was?
So he had this role for you. He had an idea for this role for you. What was you've been working with him now for years. Like, what's any advice that he's given you in the industry?
Well, I don't know that he's giving me any.
Or the other way around? You're giving him advice.
No, certainly not the other way around. I mean, the one I did a film that he produced. This is I've told this story before, but I did a film called The Bellco Experiment that James wrote and produced, and was directed by a wonderful director named Greg McLean, who is a horror director. He's a film director. He's done horror. He's done lots of other things, but he's famous for a film called Wolf Creek. Anyway, we're in South America, and I'm playing this part, and James is an extraordinary friend, and the way he celebrates the people in his life with his way with words is something. And there wasn't much to go on for this character that was in James's script was called Burly Man. He ended up being named Tony Fowler, I think, in the film. Interestingly enough, my part in Guardians 3 was Burly Guard in the script before it got the name. So Burly, I have down. I think also my Ant-Man and the Wasp character was named Agent Burly. So I'm getting.
I wrote that down in my notes. Yeah,
I am a burly person. But he had written this sort of cast announcement, and in it he mentioned my character's name, which was the first time I learned it. And he had written, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well, because he had written that Tony Fowler was already an asshole before anything bad happened in the story. So I'm flying down to South America to work on this movie, and it's, living the dream really, and trying to parse what I'm going to do with this role. And I went up to James on the first day we're down in South America, and I say, so I got this idea about this guy, and I think this guy, and the whole story centers around this office workers that are forced to kill each other by an unseen force. And so I've come up with this idea that he's middle management and he's never really been able to impress anybody. And so the way he's going to handle this challenge, he's going to finally get everybody's attention and everybody's going to be impressed with him. And I run this idea by James, and he goes, "That's the stupidest thing I ever heard." That's not it at all. And I'm like, all right, well, back to the drawing board. And so I go and I spend the night thinking about it, and I see him the next day, and I go up to him and I say, okay, how about this? He was going to bring a gun into work one day anyway, and today's his lucky day. And James said, yeah, that's it. So that is the thing that I think is great about James and the way that he works is he is absolutely honest. So when you have delivered something that pleases him, you know it. And when you have delivered something that doesn't and needs work, you know that too. And I think that there is a dearth of that a lot of times people are going to be really worried about an actor's feelings, or really worried about any number of things. What James is concerned with is telling the story well, and he is single-minded in making sure that story is being told and told as best as it can. And anytime you get a chance to work with somebody like that, you count yourself very, very lucky. And any chance, I mean, I'd crawl through glass to work for James. I love working for him, and I'm very ceaselessly proud of all that he has achieved. And frankly, I think he's just getting warmed up.
Oh yeah, I think so too. So the trilogy has a great cast, but what's your thoughts on Dave Bautista? I think he killed it.
Dave is magnificent. He's wonderful. And I met Dave when he was in doing the screen tests for the first one. And Dave is, he put so much into Drax and made so much out of that role. But you look at his career beyond that, and I think he's indelible. And I talked to him about it when we were on set for 3. His stuff in Blade Runner, at the beginning of Blade Runner, is magnificent. I just saw maybe a couple of weeks ago. What is it? A Knock at the Cabin.
Yeah.
He's great. He talk about somebody who's just getting warmed up. He can do. Drax is magnificent, and the arc of Drax is magnificent. But I think in Dave Bautista, there's a guy who is also, I think, just barely scratched the surface of what he can offer. I think he is a real exceptional actor. I'm very, very, and getting to work with him and with Pom, both of them, they're just absolute pros. And it's a couple of minutes on the screen, but that shoot took the whole day. So you're sitting there with that scene, and you got to keep it alive for every angle and every shot and it takes a lot of focus and a lot of concentration, and also to make it seem spontaneous over all that time. And those guys, you could not ask for better scene partners than the two of them.
So we have 3 movies. What are the chances for a 4th one? Have you heard anything? I know he keeps saying this might have been it, but how he works too.
I don't know anything more than you can read in the trades. But I know that James and Peter Safran are in the DCU now, and I know that they've got a 10-year plan over there. And James works harder than almost anybody I know, but I don't think that he'll be able to be focused on two different universes at the same. So I think if there is more for the Guardians, and again, I do not know, but if there is more for the Guardians, I think it will be without James, and so it'll be very different. Although we have seen, the Guardians without James in the Russo brothers movies, and I guess in one of Taika Waititi's movies too. So it's happened. But yeah, I have that's way, Elias, so far above my pay grade. I have no idea.
So you mentioned, you have Borderlands also coming up next. Like, any other projects that you're allowed to tell us about also?
No. There is at least there's another project. It remains unannounced. And that actually will be my first, my second ever voiceover gig. And that's a few episodes of what is going to be, I think, a very exciting series, but that remains unannounced, and I'm not going to be able to talk about that beyond what I've just said. But that's coming down the pike.
Speaking of that, now, how can the listeners, the viewers that tune in this, find you on social media to keep up with you for news and everything?
Well, find me on Instagram. I am at Big Ben Davis, and you can find me on Twitter as long as it exists. I'm at Tooda, Tooda, on Twitter, although I am there less and less these days. But Instagram is probably the best place to find me.
Amazing. Ben, I want to thank you for giving me today. This was great, and go Patriots.
Hey, go Pats, absolutely. Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to meet another, as long as I've said it already, another masshole.
That's right.
So thanks for having me, man.
Thank you.
Great talking to you.
Let's get you back on with your next project.
I look forward to it, man.